Hi again, Captain Peter Cutsey. This is part 2 of the Airspeed Unreliable series. We have lifted off of runway 21 at Coffs Harbour in New South Wales and in Eastern Australia, and we experienced an IAS disagree. We can see it on the bottom of the captain's PFD. Remember, there is no master caution or oral alert, and it's difficult to see. And if we actually go across to what the FO is experiencing at the same time, this is what the FO is experiencing. Now, if you notice, we went through the recall items for airspeed unreliable is what we did. Because remember in the last video, an IAS disagree QRH references for us to go to the airspeed unreliable checklist. Well, the airspeed unreliable checklist has memory items. So we've completed them. Autopilot disengage, as you can see. Auto throttle disengage. And as pilot flying, I asked the pilot monitoring to turn off both flight directors. And we had flaps extended. Here we are at flaps 10. So we set 80% N1 and pitch 10 degrees. Those were or are the memory items. Brought them up from the QRH. So we've completed the memory items. Now, let's go on to what we would be doing in a checklist. Remember, the checklist is read by the pilot monitoring and would be read from the top to ensure that we have done all the required conditions. Now remember, the airspeed, the condition for this is airspeed or Mach indications are suspected to be unreliable. Well, we saw that. Items which might indicate unreliable airspeed are listed in the additional information section. Well, we had a look at that, and there are numerous. And we've actually experienced that today on the first officer side. We could see that. In any case, the objective is to identify a reliable airspeed indication. Well, right away, we've completed the memory items. There's the captain's airspeed and altitude. And there is the ISFD, airspeed, altitude, and pitch. So the captain's PFD and the ISFD are a match. The first officers, quite a bit different. So the initial thinking here is that we have found a reliable source. To identify a reliable airspeed indication if possible, or to use flight with unreliable airspeed table in the performance in flight chapter. We don't have time right now at this particular point to go into the performance because it was right on takeoff. And we actually found what we thought was a match. So the captain should be the pilot flying. All right. So let's get into the actual checklist. So once the captain in this particular case is flying the aircraft and under control, he would call, or she would call for the checklist. The pilot monitoring would go through all the items from the top through the point of this particular point and ensure probe heat switches check on. What we have and they're on. Now remember, the following are reliable. Attitude, which we've already had a look at. By the way, the attitude that we saw in the captain's PFD and the ISFD and the first officer's PFD were all a match. So the attitudes were reliable, but the captain's PFD, we've decided, was the most reliable by getting a match with the ISFD. So N1 is reliable. We said 80%. Ground speed and range of altitude. These are reliable sources. The notes, which would be read, stick shaker overspeed warning and airspeed low alerts may sound erroneously or simultaneously. The flight path vector and pitch limit indicator may be unreliable on the PFD and HUD, so don't use them. The stick shaker indicator on the angle of attack indicator may be unreliable, and the analog needle and approach reference band may be unreliable. Well, here we are with the on the PFD, the angle of attack indicator. It appears to be unreliable, so you can't focus on it. The only thing we can focus on, and we're doing that, is pitch at 10 degrees, thrust at 80%, because we are in an extended flap situation. Flight directors are off, and that's all we can do for the time being as we fly the airplane and get happy with what we see. I have chosen one scenario. In the next video, we'll do another scenario. So, and I've highlighted this to make it easy.